Chapter 27: New Immigrants, New Cities. The New Immigrants. Previous immigrants had come mostly from Western and Northern Europe, but the new immigrants in the 1880s were from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, as well as Asia and Mexico. The reasons for both waves of immigration were mostly the same. Immigrants strived to escape the overcrowding, religious and political persecution, and economic problems of their homelands. They hoped for a better life in America. Ellis Island. After immigrants completed the often treacherous journey to the U.S., they had one last hurdle to cross: the Immigration Processing Center, where their health, legal status, and destination were confirmed. Many people had their names respelled, shortened, or otherwise Americanized. The most famous immigration processing center was Ellis Island in New York Harbor. Most of those who came through Ellis Island were European. Asians usually entered the U.S. through the Bay Area's Angel Island, and Mexican immigrants tended to arrive through an immigration center in El Paso, Texas. The Statue of Liberty, installed in New York Harbor in 1886, was a gift to the U.S. from France. The poem on the base of the statue includes the famous lines, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," from The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. To many immigrants, the first sight of the statue represented a new beginning and the American dream. Becoming American. Like previous immigrants, the new immigrants tended to settle in ethnic neighborhoods where they could continue speaking the language and practicing the religion, cuisine, and traditions of their homelands. However, the new immigrants were more recognizably different, and the diversity they brought to cities was often seen as a negative. Some U.S. citizens feared the immigrants would take jobs away from citizens by working for less, while others thought that the immigrants should assimilate into American culture as quickly as possible. Nativism, an opposition to immigration, was on the rise again. Assimilate means to blend in. As it turned out, many immigrants, including women and children, ended up working in factories or sweatshops under harsh conditions for very low pay. Immigrant farmers could not afford to purchase their own land in America, so they had no choice but to accept the work. A sweatshop is a factory defined by its poor working conditions and low wages. In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which banned immigration from China for 10 years. The act was renewed twice for a total of 30 years. Congress also limited immigration from Japan and, unsuccessfully, attempted to restrict all immigration by illiterate persons. Convicts and people with certain illnesses were banned from coming to the U.S. Although immigrants were encouraged to Americanize, the notion of being American was difficult to define. As immigrants assimilated, they changed what it meant to be American. America was becoming a melting pot, a blending of cultures. Urbanization. Most immigrants moved to cities. As machinery reduced the need for farm labor, those workers began coming to cities in the North for factory work, as did many African Americans from the South. It was a time of great urbanization, or growth of cities. City life. Turn-of-the-century cities were places of innovation and excitement. The steel industry and the invention of the elevator, patented by Elijah Otis, allowed buildings to be taller. Building up rather than out conserves city space. The first skyscraper was a 10-story building constructed in Chicago in 1884. Next time you're in an elevator, look for a logo. The Otis Elevator Company is still a major producer of elevators. Public transportation enabled travel. San Francisco installed its cable cars in 1873, and Richmond introduced trolleys, electric cars that would replace horse-drawn streetcars. Boston opened up its subway system in 1897, and New York City followed in 1904. Construction of Central Park was completed in 1873. Designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, the park was built when New York recognized the importance of having a green space. Other major parks were built during that same time period. Cities were still in need of development. The working class often lived in dangerous tenements that were unhygienic and overcrowded. Areas with many tenements became slums, which led to increased crime. City sewage systems were not equipped to handle so many people. Earthquakes and fires could destroy large sections of cities at a time because of unsafe building standards. These problems encouraged the growing middle class to move to the suburbs, now easier to reach because of better transportation. Reforming the cities. Local governments did little to address the problems of the cities, especially for immigrants. However, individual activists tried to make a difference. Photojournalist Jacob Riis took photos of slums to expose their terrible conditions. Others set up settlement houses to provide social services to the poor. New York's Neighborhood Guild, founded in 1886 by Charles Stover and Stanton Coit, was the first. The most famous settlement house was Chicago's Hull House, founded in 1889 by Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr.